Welcome, time travelers, and welcome, new time travelers. As always, if you're new to this channel and enjoy learning about history, one event at a time, then don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get into it. Today, we're going to start out in 1510 when Italian artist Sandro Botticelli, one of the greatest painters of the Florence Renaissance, passed away. On this day in 1792, meeting on what is now Wall Street in New York City, 24 businessmen took the initial steps to forming the New York Stock Exchange. 1866 is when French composer Erik Satie, whose spare, unconventional, and often witty style exerted a major influence in the 20th century music, was born in Honfleur. 9 years later, in 1875, the first Kentucky Derby was won at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, and the winning horse was Aristides. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. Our next stop will be in 1900 when L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was first published, and it became a classic children's literature. The 1939 film adaptation is among the most beloved movies in American cinema. 18 years later, in 1918, Swedish opportunistic soprano Birgit Nilsson, who was celebrated as a Wagner interpreter and known for her powerful, rich voice, was born in Västra Karpa. I want to say that's in Sweden, but I'm not sure. We're going to make a stop in 1939 when the first televised sporting event in the United States was a college baseball game between Princeton and Columbia, aired on NBC. Our next stop is 1946 when railways of the U.S. were seized by President Harry S. Truman as emergency measures, often after railway unions refused to call off strike scheduled for March 18th. 1950 is when the Senate rejected President Harry S. Truman's plan to recognize the Interstate Commerce Commission and the Federal Communications Commissions. On this day in 1954, lawyer Thurgood Marshall scored a landmark victory as the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled in Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka that radical segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Now, in 1963, the U.S. is revealed to have suspended diplomatic relations with Haiti. 10 years later, in 1973, IRA guerrillas bombed Aldergrove Airport outside Belfast, North Ireland, in what a UK spokesman described as a new offensive to disrupt upcoming elections. In 1994, voters ousted the president of Malawi, and Malawi's first multi-party elections, non-agrarian President Hastings Kamzo Banda, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, was defeated by Balaki Malzi, candidate of the United Democratic Front. Maluzi had formerly been Secretary General of the ruling Malawi Congress Party. Banda, self-declared president for life, had exercised dictatorial power since 1964, when the African Republic became independent from Britain. The electorate, however, had paved the way for his removal in June of 1993 by passing a referendum establishing a multi-party political system. 2 years later, in 1996, when U.S. President Bill Clinton signed Megan's Law, which required that the law enforcement officials notify schools, daycare centers, and residents of the presence of registered sex offenders in their communities. That actually all stemmed because of a young girl whose name was Megan, and she was sexually molested. I don't remember if it was by her father or a neighbor or someone did inappropriate things to her, and they were brought to trial. And I'm not quite sure if she passed away, but I'm actually gonna Google that after this. 2 years before the turn of the century, in 1998, David Wells of the New York Yankees pitched a perfect game. No opposing player gets on base. Only the 15th such feat in the history of Major League Baseball. And finally, 2004 is when Massachusetts became the first U.S. state to legalize same-sex marriage, as it began issuing marriage licenses to gay couples. And I will see you in the next video.